This is Dr. Jeanne Olson. She is a graduate of Colorado State University College of Veterinary Medicine. She's been practicing veterinary medicine for 37 years. She's the sole proprietor of Raven Veterinary Services, which is where we are coming to you from. It's a log Alaskan style facility here. She is a holistic practitioner who also uses Western and Eastern medicine, whatever is necessary. Jeanne, I did mention a bunch of this on her biography that I sent out, but mostly what I'd like you to know about Jeanne is that she is kind of the go-to vet in the entire interior of Alaska when other veterinarians cannot figure out what's going on with a dog that's older or can't move properly or whatever. Jeanne's the one they send those dogs to, and almost invariably she can help them. Jeanne has also worked with lots of sled teams. So she's worked with a lot of athletic dogs and a lot of dogs that are out there running and working hard. And she's got a very different approach, a holistic approach. And she's going to talk to you about that. She's also going to talk to you about supplements, books, various things that you can do on your own to help your dog. So with that, I am going to give you over to Dr. Jeanne Olson.
Hello, everybody. Yes, from Alaska. I grew up in Iowa, went to Colorado State. The questioning about medicine started even before I went to veterinary school, asking why, not just memorizing. So that's kind of how it went. I managed to get through school. There's a adage that says 50% of what you learned in vet school will be wrong or proven wrong eventually. And that's probably true for almost every profession, but definitely for medicine. And we are evolving at a really rapid pace. Can you guys hear me okay? And we can't see chat, and I don't want to touch anything so I guess just interrupt if there's a question or something, and we'll just, if there's something that's relevant to it right now, just interrupt. I think that'll work the best. So yeah, we Jeanne, had a half an hour playing with Zoom. Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine, Jeanne.
Okay, good. So anyway, yeah, we had some magical things with Zoom, but we've got it figured out. But I'm not going to touch my Canva presentation to look at the Zoom. So if there's any chats, just shout them out to me and we can stop. I've got an hour, I guess, and I'm going to talk really fast. Because this is going to be recorded, there's going to be a lot that you can just go back and refer to, because I'll zoom through a lot of the things and you'll scratch your head. I'm going to try and make it not too academic, but a little bit academic so that you don't get too bored. So anyway, this is what we're supposed to be talking about. I understand, the elderly dog. So the one thing I could not protect you from was time, which is the truth. It really is. But there are some things we can do to slow down time. And that's what I want to talk about as much as I can. I was telling Sue, the two books that I most often refer to these days are these two books. The Forever Dog came out about 5 years ago or so. Dr. Karen Becker, she's got another book out now called The Forever Live, which is basically the how-to. This was the why, but not the how, for how to keep your dog forever, even though we can't. But the gist of that title, if anybody's read that book, is, the co-author got a dog, a golden retriever, did everything they possibly could right so this dog would live forever. And then when it was only in mid-age, it ended up with lymphoma. And it was like, why? Why did that happen? And the raw dog food, this is a small paperback that you can get right off of Amazon, and it's really basic. And if you've ever tried feeding raw and you give up because it's too complicated, I recommend this book a lot. And pretty much what I say to people is, you can do everything else you want. You can do chemo, you can do supplements, you can do medications, but if you don't do diet, it's probably 100-fold difference in your success rate if you don't do real food. And I don't say that people have to do all real food. You can just do partly and gain a lot. I tell people it's a little bit like exercise for us. Maybe you can't run a 5K every day, but maybe you can at least walk around the block or at least walk out to get your mail. So there's where we are. Here's another book that's quite old, probably 20 years old now, but it's about the biome in our gut. And gut biome is a huge thing now. We now know that pretty much not only we are what we eat, but why we are what we eat is because it's all the different flora down there that's affecting it. And there's organisms down there that affect our mood, affect our energy, and affect our immune system. And so I can't say enough about eating real food. This is another incredible book, pretty technical, but Dr. Walls had MS and it's been in remission for a long time. She was in a wheelchair before she wrote this book. And she's got an institute at University of Iowa now studying MS and autoimmune diseases. And it's an incredible book based on diet. I'm just going to run through some of the other books that I really like. Dr. Royal, she's from Chicago, I think, and that's a pretty good book. This is a book by Dr. Susan Wynn and then Steve Marston, who's not just a veterinarian, but also a human naturopath. He lives in San Diego now, but he's from Canada, and he's just an incredible. And if you ever see his name on any kind of a conference, do not hesitate to go. And this is another one, the Institute for the, what is it called? The Personalized Lifestyle Medicine Institute, PLMI. It's a human website, an organization based from Institute for Functional Medicine, created by Dr. Jeffrey Bland. And you can go on there. You don't have to be a veterinarian or a professional. You can just say you're something else. But you can sign up for these free webinars that are out there. The next one is December 9th. And they're amazing. And it's my go-to for cutting edge work right now. And they do all kinds of stuff with the biome and immunology, and it's really good. You can also be a member. And when you're a member, you get to go back and listen to all the past episodes as well, because most of them, they're a little bit over my head and they use huge words, but I find them always interesting and I learn a lot each time. So that's something you should look up. Here's some of the upcoming things that they have for their conferences for the rest of this year. And then there's more. But like I said, the webinars are where you can go and it's free. And even if you only gain one bit of information, it's pretty incredible. So that's it for the learning stuff. Now, I would also like to talk about this hot topic, epigenetics. Basically, in a nutshell, we always say, well, my parents had this, or, my sister has this too. I must have the same gene, so I'm doomed. But what we found is that's not necessarily true. We've learned that we can turn on and off these genes that affect our health and affect what diseases we might have. The institute that I was referring to, that you can actually do DNA analysis, kind of like what they do for the embarking dogs, and they can show what you might be prone to. Like you can now screen for Alzheimer's, right? But that doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's. But what it does is say, hey, here's the things you can do now because you're at risk to prevent that kind of thing. So epigenetics, pay attention to it. That word's been around for 10 years. The last 5 years, it's appearing more and more, and it's now becoming pretty much mainstream. So I hear that. I think there's some of you out there that are keen to that, and I agree that this is really part of it. And the factors that affect those genetic changes are stress, microbe imbalance, which is gut stuff mostly, could be diseases, the environmental toxins, and diet. And that's it. And this is a human slide. And those inflammatory pathways at the bottom, those are going to blow your mind. But that's tumor necrosis factor and ILF, all these different things that are basically things that they can measure in the bloodstream now to see if your cancer treatments are working. So pretty cool stuff. This slide tells me that, yeah, you are what you eat. And I can tell you that about once a week, my 4 dogs get one of those each. That's just a raw chicken thigh. And it's got the drumstick on this one, but I usually just use the chicken thighs. Up here, chicken thighs with the skin and bone in are about $1.69 a pound, way cheaper than most things, and a completely nutritionally balanced diet. The bone, don't worry about it. It's about the size of my middle pinky, or my little pinky. And if you feed it raw, they're just going to crunch it down and you won't have any problems. I teach a class every once in a while and I spend an hour on food and I give them a homework saying, go get some chicken thighs and next week tell me how it goes. And I can tell you of a class of about 20 or 30, maybe 5 are brave enough to do that. But when they do it, they're great. One lady this past class said, I just couldn't do the bone. I had to cut the bone away. And she fed them that way every week, every day that week. And I said, there's going to come a time when you're going to be in a hurry and you're just going to throw that chicken thigh in the bowl, bone and all, and you're going to see they did fine. And then you'll be okay. But that leap of faith is awfully hard to do sometimes. So this is another website, BJ's Raw. There's a lot of this website. I think they're based out of Pennsylvania, and you can order raw food from them. I have several clients that get it for their dogs or their cats up here. You can just get organ meats. You can just get just a package of heart or just a package of chicken livers or something. But there's some blog information on here, and I really recommend it to just take a deep dive into this someday when you have some time. Winter's a good time for that because nobody's gardening. Then this, let's see if I can enlarge this a little bit. Whoops. This is the scary part. The glycophosphates, they're everywhere in America and they are water soluble. They're in our plants. And they're animals that eat primarily plants like horses. If you measure the glycophosphates in their urine, you'll find them be really, really high. Not so high in humans, especially because we're omnivores. But as you get towards the herbivore part, you'll see that they're more and more in there. Thank goodness they're water soluble, but they can certainly wreak havoc on your DNA and your hormones, which is where we have a problem. And the reason that plants are now GMO, and so we go, oh, this is GMO-free product, I'm going to get this GMO cereal. The reason that they had to develop GMO plants was because they couldn't survive the pesticide glyphosates. And so now that they are GMO modified, they can live even though the glycophosphates are sprayed on the fields. And the fields are sprayed at the beginning for weed control. And then at the end, they may be sprayed because it's also a plant mature modifier. And so they can control when they want to be able to harvest the grains. OWL, I think, is the acronym. Oats, wheat, and legumes are the dangers, and peas are the highest in glycophosphates. And if you think Cheerios, you want to buy Cheerios because they're GMO free. Well, unless they're organic, they've got glycophosphates in them. So that's just a quick rundown on some of the things that affect your epigenetics. So now I'm going to go over to another part of the life of being a veterinarian and being a pet owner. And that's if you have an aging dog, when you go to a conventional, I call them allopathic, regular vets, here's what you're going to get. You may end up with Librela. That's the newest thing that's been coming out. And now there's one that's available, I think, for a 6-month duration instead of monthly. Basically, it works as a monoclonal antibody, which is another hot modality for treatment for various conditions. But it basically goes in and it's like an antibody that attaches to the nerve growth factor, which is for pain. So it's kind of affecting your immune system, or it is affecting the immune system of your dog. They also have it for cats. And there are sometimes some serious complications, and we haven't been able to predict which dog are going to be affected and end up with some kind of an acute reaction, allergic reaction, or basically an autoimmune disease based on this. So I'd say it has turned a lot of dogs around and they've been way comfortable and lived a lot longer, but that's not the first thing I would reach for sure. There's another one, Adequan. I'm hoping that most of you are aware of that. It's an extract of caltrachea cartilage originally developed in Germany for people for rheumatoid and degenerative joint disease, arthritis. It came over in America 35, 40 years ago for horses and dogs in Canada. And now We can use it pretty much in all species, but you cannot use it in America for humans. And that's another story. B12 is another really important thing. There's as mammals age, intrinsic factor is a thing in our gut, and it helps with the microbe and the absorption of nutrients. And so B12 is important because as we age, we produce less of it. And so once a week, once a month is kind of handy to give that. And I think there are some veterinarians, conventional veterinarians that use it. So it's pretty much by prescription, but it's easy to use. You can give it sub-Q. Spinoni would give like 1 cc once a month, once a week. That works pretty fine. And people, anybody over 80, I would definitely give it at least once a month in a human. Now, here's some other things you may be familiar with. Cold lasers. A lot of veterinarians are using cold lasers for many different things. You can use them for wound healing. You can use them as an anti-inflammatory for arthritis. You can use them for muscle or tissue injury. I use it every time I do surgery, spays and neuters and wounds. I do not use it for removing tumors and incisions for that. Because basically the way lasers work is it's a light energy, kind of like the sun with photosynthesis. Affects the mitochondria, and it goes in and it stimulates the mitochondria and the cells to increase their energy production. And when they increase their energy production, things happen. You help the cells that are anti-inflammatory. You can enhance wound healing by the fibroblasts. You can enhance the white cells to fight infections, all kinds of things based on the different frequencies that these gadgets produce. They're the ones that the veterinarians have. They're called class 4 lasers. They're pretty potent, pretty strong, run about $20,000 to $30,000. This one is one that you can actually purchase. Grady is a company that is an incredibly responsive, great customer service group. And you can get this one from them right now. Sue's got one actually, and it's easy to use. Here's what it comes with, and right now they're on sale. I'm just telling you this. I don't own any stock or have any interest in Grady, but I have 3 instruments from Grady, and I really like them all. So, and their customer service is amazing. So there's that. How does it work? Well, I tell people it's a lot like Star Trek when you go down to the medical bay in Star Trek and they do magic on you. It's because sometimes people will be in my clinic and I'm using this laser over their body of the dog and they're going, how does this work? Go, it's like Star Trek. And they go, okay, that's how it goes. But basically it's light therapy. It goes in and it stimulates the immune system or the fibroblasts, whatever, the mitochondria in the cells. The different frequencies stimulate different cell types. This picture shows you the one I showed you, the Grady one, is a class 3. It's not as powerful. The class 4s are actually so powerful that they'll emit like a microwave burn to the tissues, and that's why they're not available just for public use. They're pretty dangerous to use if you're not aware of them. So that's cold laser. Another thing that you can use is something called assisi loops, and ASSISI. I think that you may need a veterinary agreement to get them, but maybe not. But that's a different type of energy. And its fancy thing is targeted pulsed electromagnetic field energy. So, trying to figure out, I can't really think of an analogy of it except for if I was going to say anything, it would be like the electromagnetic fields of our auras and any kind. We have electromagnetic fields, and they've actually measured in humans the strength of your electromagnetic field of your heart. There's an institute called the Institute of Heart Math in California where all that science is occurring. So the assisi loops are another really amazing thing. They come in different options. I just sent a spare one home with this little Jack Russell Terrier that's ancient, and that bed that she has got is about the size of a cat bed, and she's laying on that and doing fine. But so assisi loops are another option that are something very doable you can do at home for arthritis, pretty much for arthritis and injuries. And this is how those pulsed electromagnetic fields work. in a nutshell. And like I said, if you have any questions on all these things, you can also, there's Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend. You can just get lost in all kinds of information about how technical you want to be about this. But I'm just kind of showing you backgrounds on this to show you that this isn't just quackery things. There's really science behind all of this stuff. Now, here's what I do in my practice. I cannot imagine not practicing with Adequan. I've been using Adequan since I started practicing in 1988. And I really, really like it. I started using it before the canine version came out in America. The equine version, the difference is that for a horse, they get as a dose that one whole vial, whereas a dog, the dose is 1 cc per 50 pounds of body weight. So if you're going to use it in a dog, you would be putting a needle in there more than one time for several doses. And so they developed the canine one and put preservative in it. Well, I had been using the equine Adequan for 20 years and said, well, I'm not having any problems with my equine Adequan. I always use a new needle and syringe. So I'm just going to keep using this rather than put preservatives in my patients. So it's up to you. If you can get a prescription for it and just go through 1-800-PET-MEDS, do that. But the markup is incredible. But a vial should be about $55 or $60. If it's $100, go find another source. This is an article that I found out years ago, 1990 something, 97, Sue says. And this was in a human journal of Orthopedic Research. But what they basically did is they took beagles. It should have been in a veterinary journal, but it wasn't. And most veterinarians don't know about this. Artiperon is the name of the product in Germany, by the way. But basically, they took it and they took these beagles and they cut the meniscus out of both of their knees. And then they let these beagles just be beagles for 6 months. Then they killed the beagles and then looked at the joints. Now, that whole process makes me sick to my stomach to think about it. But what it gave us was this. And what you can see is these are basically the surfaces under the microscope of the cartilage. And so basically they concluded, what they did is they injected Adequan into one knee and just saline in the other knee. And so what you're looking at there is the two different knee surfaces after 6 months of wear and tear with the Adequan protecting it. And you see that fairly nice smooth surface of the picture on B, and then just the gutted, trashed out cartilage surface on the surface of cartilage A. And that is pretty much it. It's not subjective. I mean, this has probably been, for me, the go-to article when people doubt whether the stuff really works. Interestingly enough, when you're given that dose, and you can give it sub-Q, even though it's labeled to give in the muscle, you can just give it sub-Q like a vaccine. And what you'll find is that you're not giving them enough to go into the joints to actually lube it. Somehow that Adequan, which is an extract of caltrachea cartilage, is stimulating the joint capsule to produce the joint fluid. And joint fluid is the most slipperiest compound ever known to nature. We have never been able to synthesize anything, graphite, nothing as effective as joint fluid. So there you have it. And by giving extra doses, periodic, say once a month or so, what you're doing is, because you already have wear and tear, the joints they're producing inflammatory enzymes, and those enzymes are breaking down that joint fluid. So it's basically, I tell people, it's like Dorothy with the oil can and the Tin Man, and you just need to keep re-lubing up the joints. So hope that clears that up, and I really do like Adequan a lot. This is the ad for canine Adequan, and it should be mainstream. And if you haven't heard of it or you're not using it, think again. It is pretty amazing stuff. Another thing that I use is acupuncture, and the skeletal drawing there with the lines through it is just a few of the acupuncture meridians in a dog. And then there's numbers on some of them. If you enlarge it a little bit, you might be able to see them. But basically, the meridians are basically like I guess the analogy would be for acupuncture is that if you imagine your house wiring circuits, and let's say you've got a kitchen circuit and you've got a bathroom circuit and a bedroom circuit, basement circuit, and the meridians in animals have names like stomach, spleen, heart, pericardium, but they don't necessarily go through those organs, and they don't necessarily follow nerve pathways. But so let's just say the stomach meridian is like your kitchen meridian, your kitchen wiring, and you blow an outlet. Suddenly you don't have, so you go back and you reset your circuit breaker and you're good to go again, right? Well, so that's a little bit like what happens with acupuncture. There's energy going around those circuits, those meridians in the body. And when there's a problem, whether it's a disease or an injury or pain, this energy stops. You get a blockage of energy, and you need to reset that circuit breaker. And how you reset the circuit breaker, there are some main circuit breaker panel points that are called master points in the body, but there's all these 200 and some points as well. And an acupuncturist that knows their stuff knows, okay, we're going to use this point for this problem. And that's based on a lot of things, but the particular point itself could also be likened to like your ground fault outlet, where you push that little red button, because just the ground fault outlet trip, not your circuit breaker in the back. And sometimes you have to continue to do acupuncture on a regular basis because you haven't removed the problem. That's like, if you overload the circuit too many times, you're going to just have to go back to the circuit breaker panel and reset it. So I hope that makes some sense to you. I'm going to skip the little zebra guy on the bottom and go to the next slide and show you that this is the science from about 20 years ago about what happens when you stick a needle in tissue. And then here's all the pathways with all the really big words. And that's just the beginning. I'm sure it's even more bizarre than that. They call it, this is the simplified block diagram. So anyway, there is really science behind what the Chinese developed 2,500 years ago, for sure. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll actually put B12 or lidocaine or a homeopathic solution into an acupuncture point, and that's called aquapuncture, AQUA, liquid. And I'll often do that for some of the old dogs, put them in some of the most important points for just energy and arthritis. Now I'm going to go back to this one, and this little guy down here on the bottom, those are, you see C2, C3, C4, and they're lined up with the surface of the dog drawing. Well, those are actually the spinal cord segments, and this is a drawing from one of my neurology books, but this is the basis of chiropractic, really. And so I'm certified in chiropractic too, and I think it's a little bit harder, and you have to be a lot more careful in doing chiropractic on older animals than younger animals. But certainly, there is definitely some validity to this. And these little areas that are shown here are basically called the dermatomes, or these are the spinal cord segments that innervate that part of the skin of the body. So if anybody has a dog that has like it's called lick granulomas on their front wrists, or maybe they're chewing somewhere on their hair back, maybe by their knee, well, this is a cheat sheet to show you that chiropractic problem for that is based on those spinal nerve segments. You can treat the actual spot all you want, but you're not going to get resolution unless you address the spinal cord and the spine. We'll shrink them back down again. Now we'll skip that and we'll go to this. So now here's another thing that I use a lot, supplement wise, for older dogs. My guys, bigger dogs, over 50 pounds and over, that's over 10, they all get CoQ10 once a day. This is the ubiquinone form of it. There's also ubiquinol, which is about twice as expensive, and people, it's advertised to say, well, it's more bioavailable. So then you think, oh, I should get this one instead. But what people don't understand, and even a lot of doctors and veterinarians don't understand, is that the ubiquinone is the part that gets absorbed, then it gets converted to ubiquinol in the body. And ubiquinol does not get absorbed very well at all. It has to be ubiquinome to get it in through the intestines. And it's oil-based. So drink it with, give it with oil or butter or, the food. People give it, cream in your hot chocolate. That's great. So you can stick it in a piece of cheese and that'll be really absorbed. If it's not bright orange, it's not CoQ10 also, by the way. So why would we give CoQ10? Well, here's the drawing of the difference between ubiquinol and ubiquinone. And you can see the only difference is there's a double bond where that benzene ring is. If you know your chemistry, there's an OH instead of an O. And that's just, it's called the reduced form. It just adds another bond in there. It's just chemistry. So now here is part of the reason why we do it. Back to mitochondria. They're called the powerhouses of the cells. Without the cells would be unable to extract significant amounts of energy, blah, 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 blah. And the two most important tissues that require the most energy in the body is the heart and the brain. So there you go for that. In an older animal or even humans, you should do this. This is a really, really good article in the British Journal of Cardiology. You can do a search and get it. It's very readable, and you might need to read it 5 or 6 times. It's 10 years old, but it's got a really good background. And part of the things that I'm doing is I'm touching on stuff that also relates to humans. I go to way more human Zoom meetings and conferences than veterinary ones because the veterinary ones we just seem to be stuck on the same thing. We're going to use antibiotics and steroids for skin problems. And yeah, we're just not there yet. So I find this stuff a lot more interesting. Here is how CoQ10 works. The Krebs cycle. Sue swears she never learned about the Krebs cycle in biology. I hope some of you know the Krebs cycle. It's in the mitochondria, and it's what produces the ATPs. And I found it so tedious to have to memorize that in high school biology. But I did, and I forgot it, and I had to memorize it again in undergraduate, and I memorized it again and again and again and again. But CoQ10 is in the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria, and that's why it's so important. It's basically the spark plug for the engine. That's the analogy. You've got to have it to go down through that pathway to produce energy on the left, which is that NADH, NAD thing. All right. So here's another really important take-home message, not for dogs, because we don't tend to give dogs statins. But any of you that are on statins, or if you know anybody that is on statins, there is in the insert for the statin product that you're taking for your cholesterol lowering, it says, if you're taking this, please contact your doctor or ask your pharmacist about taking CoQ10. That's what it says in there. And the holistic physicians had to sue the FDA to get that put in as an insert 20 years ago. But basically what happens in that pathway is the statins affect the pathway in the liver to produce CoQ10. So here you are, you have cardiovascular problems because you're taking statins, and yet you're exacerbating them because you have even lower CoQ10 than you really should. So CoQ10 should be everybody's friend. Now I'm going to switch over to more other kind of supplements that aren't really like substances, they're herbs. And this is kind of intraphil and hemoglobin. Chlorophyll is what carries oxygen to plants, and hemoglobin, of course, is what carries oxygen to our tissues. The only difference is chlorophyll has a magnesium in the center, and our human hemoglobin, dog hemoglobin, mammal hemoglobin, has an iron. And so it's no wonder that plants are our friends and that they can help us heal, because we are quite similar. Are there any chats that people are asking that I should be paying attention to? I think they all
No,
left.
not yet. Go ahead, Jean.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So here's one. These are one of my favorite ones. There's a company called springtimeinc.com, and it's only online. You can't get it in any stores, but they always have deals and specials. Longevity is the one that's my favorite one, for older dogs, because it basically combines a lot of their other things. Their basic one is called Fresh Factors, but it's really amazing. There's testimonials and there's blogs on this website too for you. And this is what's in it. Sue had it for a while. She doesn't like it because it is very green, and it turned all of her dogs' beards green. And she didn't want to just give it for St. Patrick's Day. So it does now come in tablet form, but I just sprinkle it on the food, and it's a little green and messy, but they really like it. And you can usually within a month, you'll see a big difference in it. I think someone had asked me about green lip mussel. Glycoflex is one of the products out there that works pretty good. There is another company called, I didn't put it in these notes, but it's called Veterinary Recommended Solutions, VRS, Veterinary Recommended Solution, VRS.com. And they have a product out that uses the green lip mussel, but instead of using the lipic form, the oil-based part of the mussel, they use the carbohydrate form, and they claim that is more effective for the anti-inflammatory part. So I don't really know, but I took a webinar on their products, and it made sense. I just have to maybe think about it a little bit longer to try and figure out whether that's something that would work. But definitely, Glycoflex is one of the things by VetriScience that works really well.
I think the question about green lipid mussel is there contraindications to using it when you're using other meds and things like that?
Yeah, all these things that I'm talking about, there are no other contraindications at all for anything. If you want to use Glycoflex with Rimadyl, you want to use it with chemo, all these things. The nice thing about herbs is that they basically attenuate the cell's reaction to things. So basically, I cannot think of a single time when you shouldn't use a herb when you're doing other things. In fact, what you'll find oftentimes is you'll use less of the conventional stuff and have less side effects. Duralactin is kind of an interesting product. It's a chewable, and it's basically a microlactin, which is this hydrolyzed milk protein, and it's just amazing. It turned one of my dogs around when nothing else would. And I think that's the thing, is that you have a symptom of arthritis or stiffness, but it can be caused by many things. So an analogy would be, you have a headache. Do you have a hangover? Are you dehydrated? Did someone hit you in the head? Or do you have a brain tumor? So that is probably also the reason why there's so many things that are out there, and people will say, well, this works for me, try it. And then you get disappointed because it doesn't work for you or your dog. So there's all these things out there, and there's a whole lot more too, but in the interest of time, I'm just flying through them. Ginseng 18, 7-Force, you don't need a prescription for this. You can get it, I'm pretty sure, online. I like this a lot. Ginseng, a lot of people take it as they get older just for energy, but straight ginseng is a bit too potent. And so Chinese medicine has formulas where they add different herbs, and they basically complement each other in different ways. And so this is a nice one. It's got a lot of products in it, tangquay and licorice, for liver as well. And atractyloides, immune system, astragalus, immune system. I find this pretty effective for older dogs that just have fecal incontinence, and when they get up, they've just left a little piece of turd right there. So that works for that too. But I like ginseng 18 a lot, and the doses are on the bottle as well based on their body weight. 7-Forests makes it for humans and dogs, I believe, but 7-Forest is a really good brand. A lot of people are asking about mushrooms. This is an article that was in a journal about 10 years ago, based out of University of Pennsylvania's vet school, using basically turkey tail to treat hemangiosarcomas in dogs, and they found it very effective. And so Rob, can't remember his last name anymore, who founded RX Vitamins, created this RX one for just specifically for hemangiosarcomas. And there's another one that I'm using now from Steve Marston, got a Chinese name on it. I tried to stick it into these notes, but it wasn't cooperating. So I can send it to Sue, but that one you have to be a veterinarian to get. This one I'm not sure, but any of the ones with turkey tail in there are pretty darn good. None of them are going to be cheap. I think this one runs about $60, and the one that I use is also runs about $60. But I mean, it's still way cheaper than chemo. And when I put a dog on mushrooms, I would put a dog on mushrooms especially when they're older, or if they're breed specific that are prone to cancers, like boxers, Bernese Mountain Dogs, golden retrievers. So anyway, that's kind of it for mushrooms. There's a lot to be said and a lot more developing things about the magic of mushrooms for sure. There is some talk about mushrooms growing in soil versus mushrooms growing in sawdust, and that the soil ones are more potent, which is probably true. So wild harvested mushrooms are probably the thing, but commercially people are not going to be able to find that in the volumes that they need to make enough mushrooms. So let's see. This is basically to tell you that, it mattered. That's the Chinese writing for the English on the bottom, that whether it's old or new, as long as it brings about a cure, we're good. And so the Chinese didn't have the science behind it. They just had many years and many trial and errors, but they figured it out. And now Western medicine is going backwards and saying, wow, you're right. The old herbalists, they knew what to gather and what part of the plant to eat and what time of the year to harvest it. Now we're showing in science, yeah, gee, you're right, that's true. But I also would say beware of things that are too good to be true, because sometimes they may not be true. So if you're in doubt, just don't trust Google completely, but do your research and find credible sources. And in the nutshell, this is kind of one of the things that is kind of true. It's depressing to talk about sometimes and think about. You watch your dogs getting older, but on the other days, we're not going to die. So that's it. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to take them. Sue also mentioned you wanted to maybe talk a little bit about the copper toxicity studies, and I can do that too.
Someone sent a question about the Assisi loop. Can you see that in your chat?
No, I don't dare touch my
Oh,
screen.
okay. I'll read you the question. The Assisi
Sure.
loop could potentially stimulate brain regions depending on the field strength.
Correct.
So
That's it.
how would that apply? How would you apply it?
Well, I think you probably could use it for seizures, and you could definitely use it. Hopefully, I've never used it for one, but you might be able to use it for some of these cognitive dysfunctions that are going on in the older dogs that are microscopically very similar to Alzheimer's plaques.
Ah. There's another comment saying that was outstanding! Exclamation point. Thank you. 2 exclamation points. So let's see, you get that one too.
I didn't, when I was putting this together, there was lots of little gremlins and things would disappear. And I did have a screenshot of the American Holistic Veterinary Association. And you can go onto that and click and find members of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, ahvma.org, I believe. Not every one of us is in that membership. I'm not anymore, although I used to be the president. So, but word of mouth is pretty good sometimes. There's a lot of holistic veterinarians out there. Some of them are more well-rounded than others. So yeah, you just have to look around. I just came back from a conference in Phoenicia, New York, a herbal conference, and most of the people that were attending it were from the East Coast. So I do know a fair number of the people out on the East Coast, and you guys don't have to drive very far to get anywhere. Your
That's
states
right.
are so close. Your states are so close together. You go, oh my God, they're all the way in Connecticut. That's just 2 hours away. What are you doing? So anyway, up in Alaska, we go, oh yeah, it's just 6 hours. Let's go.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions you want me to talk about that copper thing?
I have a question that I don't know if it's limited to senior dogs, but it seems like when we get old dogs, they become voracious poop hunters and poop eaters. And I don't know if they just have switched their hunting to poop or if there's something going on, but they don't do it when they're young, but they certainly do it when they're old.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is, I addressed it with that B12. You might try giving some B12, and actually digestive enzymes too. In people, as you start developing acid reflux, and then they give you these antacids, but really the problem is that you're making less gastric acid, and then what you eat, you become basically a cow, and you ferment, and the digestion that's occurring in your stomach produces gas, and then you get gastric reflux, and you think that, oh, okay, I need an antacid, but what you really need is to lower your pH even more in your stomach. And you should be taking digestive enzymes that include betaine HCl. I put all my dogs, patients that have ever bloated, I put them on a digestive enzyme with betaine HCl, because I believe that they have damaged their secretory cells in their stomach, and they'll be likely to bloat again. So yeah, and so basically when dogs are poop eaters, either they're lacking something or the poop that they find tastes really good. I mean, yeah, dogs are going to always eat moose turds, and they're always going to eat cat poop. But if they're eating their own, or if they're eating someone else's, it's either their problem or the other dog's problem.
It's interesting. I mean, honestly, I have a dog that will line up behind another dog when they're pooping in order to get the first bite
Yep.
when
Yep.
it comes out. I mean, it's
Right.
pretty horrible. And
Well, you think about it, the reason that stuff forbid that they sell, but you have to give it all the time. Well, yeah, it's a digestive enzyme. It is a digestive enzyme, and so it's a lot more effective to just give digestive enzymes. Also, if you feed real food, raw food, you won't have that problem either. I have had rescue dogs come in here eating poop, and within a month they quit. So there's that. I wanted to talk about, you were giving me that history about your dog, and on Adequan and Rimadyl, and then maybe had a couple of little episodes, seizures. And I'll address seizures a little bit. In Chinese medicine, seizures are actually angry liver, energy rising, basically. So it's expressing the liver is angry and upset, and so it's expressing itself as a seizure. And so when we give phenobarbital or any of the barbiturates, anti-seizure medicine, you're supposed to get the liver enzymes checked every 6 months, because it's an insult to the liver. And also you have the tendency that you have to increase the doses of whatever anti-seizure medicine you're giving. But in Chinese medicine, what you're basically doing, every dose you're giving, you're just making that liver even more and more pissed off, to eventually you have what we consider in Western medicine a breakthrough. But in Chinese medicine, the liver finally said, I've had it. I'm going to have another seizure, because I'm going to show you how mad I am about this. So instead, what you should be doing is addressing the root cause, which is an angry liver. And in that case, you're using things like milk thistle, lots of milk thistle, like at least 500 milligrams of milk thistle. And you can use mushrooms. There's so many things out there. Tang Kui is an herb. Four Marvels is a Chinese herbal combination, Fourmarvels. That is a great one for seizures. And there's a couple more too. but I kind of decided not to go into diseases because there were so many of them, and I wanted to just focus on
Yeah,
geriatric stuff, even though all those things
right.
show up in geriatric medicine too.
Well, this dog is not epileptic. I mean, she's almost 14 and she's just had these two kind of weird episodes.
Yeah,
So
so
I was,
so, yeah, so
brain
that's an
tumor was,
angry. Yeah, no, I think it's an angry liver, and you should just
oh, okay,
try some milk thistle.
okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Anyone else
Yeah.
with questions? Let's see, there's new messages. Um, I will read you what I see. Um, do you have any opinion on the Nutramax product cobalaquin B12? It's sort of getting under something here as a daily B12 supplement versus the injectable V12, the B12. So Nutramax cobalaquin as a B12 supplement versus injectable B12.
Well, I don't have any opinion because I haven't seen the studies or anything, but I'd be open to learning about it. And Nutramax, it's a pretty good company, but they are for profit. So sometimes I think there is the concern about, is this just something for marketing, or is this valid approach? B12, there's a lot of things that talk about whether the sublingual or the oral versions are as effective as the injectables. And I don't even know where to begin. There's basically, my conclusion is, when all else fails, manipulate the data to whatever answer you want. That's the way it is in a lot with science. So it gets frustrating sometimes to try and be a critical thinker and go, well, wait a minute, they ignored that. Which brings me to the copper thing. I do really want to talk about that because Sue mentioned it. So I became aware of it way back in like 2017. The internal medicine group noticed that more and more dogs were being diagnosed with copper toxicity in their liver, not just the schnauzers. And so, whoa, what's going on here? And so then they formed a group in 2019. They call them hepatologists, which are veterinarians that are into the liver. And actually, I know two of them. Actually, one of them was my former professor, Dr. Tweed. But and they started looking at it, and there were a couple of things. First of all, they realized that there was a minimum, but there was not a maximum liver of copper parts per million or billion found in food. And then they also realized that the bioavailability of different copper, what would you call them? Sources, not sources, but the compound itself, whether it's an oxidized or whatever, copper sulfate, copper, whatever, some of them are more bioavailable than others. And so when you switch to a different product, because of economics as a dog food manufacturer, suddenly dogs may be absorbing copper better than they used to, more efficiently. Also, different species absorb copper differently, and different breeds absorb copper differently. So it gets to be pretty complicated. And so then there was a study that appeared by one of the dog food companies. I think it was Hill Science Diet, showing how effective and how safe copper was in the diet of these dogs. And that's when these 4 veterinarians drew the line in the sand and said, this is just full of holes. And they left out so much stuff. And for the first time in the history of the American Veterinary Medical Association journal, they retracted the article because it was that flawed. So that was interesting. So then they went on and they said, we've got to do something. So they petitioned the American Veterinary, I don't know, AVC something or other. It's an acronym basically of a good old boys club that oversees the safety of dog food and recommends voluntary compliance. The FDA also has a group that is part of the safety of dog food, but both of them have declined to address this. So they've basically declined to change the minimum nor address the maximum copper safety and toxicity in dogs. So that's where it stands right now. They even declined to put a warning on the dog food labels saying, basically, if you are aware that the dog that might be eating this is sensitive to copper, contact your veterinarian or something very neutral. So that warning label is not even on there. And that's pretty much it. That's where it stands right now, except for these 4 veterinarians are the heroes in the veterinary world. And they got a big award this year from our Veterinary Information Network website saying, good for you. You did it. You took the pressure and you took the heat and you're still standing up for this. And there you have it. That's all I know.
Did anyone have a follow-up question on that? Or there are a couple other questions that are in the chat.
I would get out of Canva, go to Zoom.
I can read you a couple other questions that are here. Outside of supplements and food, you can stop your screen sharing down at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm looking at questions now. Chats.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. Oh,
Okay,
I don't
up
see very many
above
though.
that, if you scroll up, there was a question about outside of supplements and food, are there things we should be doing daily, weekly, etc., with our senior dogs?
Yes, exercise. I didn't get a chance to talk about exercise, but exercise is a real big deal. Going for movement is motion and gets things moving, not just the lymph and the circulation, but it keeps those things moving. My mom, she just said, I just got to keep moving. I just got to keep moving. And I remember one time asking her when I turned 50, Mom, don't your joints hurt? She goes, oh yeah, you just have to keep moving. So, okay. I do say, I quit drinking coffee early when they started doing the tariffs. I just said, I'm not going to pay $20 for a pound of coffee. That's it. Don't like it that much anyway. So I switched over to one of those mushroom blends. I drink the mud water one. And I realized a couple of months ago, I don't ache anymore. And I don't know if it's a lack of the coffee or if it's the mushrooms, but I do think it's the mushrooms. I really do. But I think the outside of supplements and food, exercise is a big deal. And they just like to move, and and like Sue was saying, well, how many, good grief, how many supplements can I give? And I said, well, a lot of it depends on the dog too, and your pocketbook, but sometimes dogs just won't take something. They just won't. Or there's more supplements in their bowl than food. And sometimes that's okay. But a lot of times what people find is if you switch over and you just give decent real food, even if it's partially that, you're in way better shape. So, and like I say, in that kibble thing with the copper is really scary. I don't know what to say about it, except for, there's recalls all the time and people go, oh, but aren't you afraid of feeding raw, salmonella and all these other things? And I say, do you know where a dog's nose goes every day? I mean, they're all over the place. They're on the ground, they're smelling somebody else's poop, and so really, and how many times our salads get recalled? I mean, all the things that we try and eat, our cheeses, for E. coli or whatever. So I think that instead, just concentrating on the basics. And the other thing about feeding real food is don't feed the same thing all the time. Switch it up like we do. If we ate just oatmeal every day, even though it was balanced with maybe, fruit in it and milk, you're going to get tired of it. And then if somebody offers you a pizza, you're going to have some major diarrhea. So if you change things around, the flora are there and they're changing and they're adaptable. And I think that works pretty good. What protocol would you recommend for a lick granuloma with staph? I would do definitely cold laser. There's an acupuncture point called, or an acupuncture technique called surround the dragon, where you stick needles on 4 points like a compass. And then if it is a staph resistant, then the best thing is muprosin topical ointment, and then Adequin chiropractically, Adequin, and then some chiropractic for that. If it's on the wrist, it's the lower cervicals is the problem. But yeah. Don't let them do surgery and cut it out. You can also use if there's an antibiotic that works, if that you can mix it with some DMSO, maybe 10% DMSO, and apply it topically, and that'll drive that into the tissues as well. One more new message.
Yeah. Is there a specific ingredient we should look for in the dog food that has the copper in it?
I don't
At the
know.
bottom.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I might go on to my VinC and look to see. I think it's not in just, I'm not sure if it's just one type of copper or not, and if it's copper sulfate or what. I don't know that anybody knows. I haven't read any of the articles about it, but that just appeared a couple of weeks ago in my Veterinary Information Network website, which is a website that all of us as veterinarians belong to. It's a monthly subscription, and anybody in the trenches as veterinarians or out in academic at the vet schools are all on it. So you can just about ask any kind of question and you're going to get somebody to answer you. And hopefully it's somebody that's seen it or known it before. So there are advantages to having the internet. Afterward, maybe you could let me know how I can watch the entire seminar. Hi, Tony. Health Committee.
We are going to be posting it on the YouTube channel, SCOA's YouTube channel. So everybody can, I know I have to go back and look at things that, passed me by and I didn't write them down. So we can all absolutely go through it and see it again as needed.
Yeah, a whole hour could be devoted on on cancer. A whole hour could be devoted on, like, you could talk about kidney disease, liver disease, which would be including Addison's and Cushing's, seizures. That would be an hour right there, right? So, I mean, there's just a lot in medicine. That thyroid, that's another one. Oh my goodness. Iodine, I believe that probably 50% at least of dogs are deficient in iodine, and I'd say 90% of dogs are deficient in vitamin D. So there's a lot to be said for all of that. And I can't really ever say exactly why things happen the way they are. I mean, there is definitely a link with low vitamin D and cancer, but there's so many variables that you just not quite sure what you're really looking at. Seizures, there is a link. Dr. Jeanne Dodds has shown all the time that there's a link with low thyroid and seizures. The liver isn't converting it to T3. I did a pilot study with iodine levels in dogs and found every single dog I looked at had low iodine levels. And of course, thyroid is 4 iodines, and then T3 is 3 iodines linked together. So it's, why are dogs deficient in vitamin D? Diet, I would say diet. Dogs don't make vitamin D from their skin like we do. So it's got to be diet. And then there's a link with vitamin D and kidney problems. So it gets to be very confusing. So you can't just, that's why I think I really like holistic medicine, because it just brings everything together and everything is linked, and you can't just say it's this. And one of the things that's nice and why I was attracted to Chinese medicine is because they look at the body as a whole, like you're a gardener and your companion planting, whereas Western medicine is like you're a mechanic. So your starter goes out in your car, you replace that. That doesn't have anything to do with your water pump or your radio or your burned out light. So they replace things individually. And so it's the difference between a gardener and a mechanic, basically. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, what holistic medicine is. When you do one thing, you may be affecting something else and you didn't even know you did. Well, it's about what time? 8 o'clock your time, mostly?
Yeah.
Is there anybody that goes to a holistic veterinarian or knows of one?
I go to an acupuncturist sometimes, an acupuncture vet, and she's a Chinese medicine doctor for humans as well. But
Mhm.
there is another question that came up. I think it was, what do you feed dogs for iodine?
Oh, there is a product called Iodorol, Iodorol, which has 12.5 milligrams of iodine in it. And what iodine is water soluble, so it's just like vitamin C, it just goes right out if you don't need it. And so any dog that comes in with seizures, I put them on iodine, or if it's a thyroid dog that's not responding to just the typical thyroxine. The test is $100. It's a urine test, and I'm happy enough with my pilot study that I just don't do the urine test anymore. It's a human test. The doctor that just, I don't know if he discovered it, but realized it, was Dr. Michael Brownstein. He's an internal medicine doctor, I think, in Michigan. He wrote a book called Iodine and Why You Can't Live Without It. And it is a link between breast cancer and iodine. And so that book is only a half an inch thick, and everybody should read that. Iodine and Why You Can't Live Without It, for sure. Yeah. So like I said, I get a lot of information from going to human conferences that are cutting edge, even though sometimes they're way above my head because they're light years ahead of us as far as understanding all these different genetic, epigenetic things. And yeah, but I try.
Well, it's been amazing. A lot of stuff you've covered in a short time. Um, Tremendously appreciated. So
Well,
thank
thanks
you
for
so
inviting me.
much. Thank you so much. We're
We'll
very
thank Sue.
grateful.
We'll thank Sue. We'll thank Sue.
We will. Sue, you might want to close the meeting. You're there?
Okay. Yeah, Nellie's here. She's getting her treatment from Dr. Olson today.
Hmm.
So, all right. I'm gonna hit the leave the chat thing, and thanks everybody for participating. We appreciated it.